end for Q&A. So hi, you guys. I'm Celeste Gamble. I'm the Director of Development at New Directions Career Center. We are so excited that you guys are here with us tonight and able to enjoy us. I know that every time I see Craig, he's always got a smile on his face and just so positive in his energy. And Craig, we're so appreciative of you being here. So to start the evening, I'm going to turn it over to Katina Hughes. Katina, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and get started, that would be great.
Okay. Good evening. As she said, I'm Katina Hughes, and I am with cohort 12. I want to tell you a little bit about New Directions. The mission is to uplift and empower women to achieve and maintain self-sufficiency. The center achieves its mission by providing care, career counseling, employment-related education, and information services. The vision is to be the spark that encourages and motivates every woman to live to her potential. So just a little bit about my why. So my friend joined New Directions, and she was in cohort 5. As I mentioned, I was in cohort 12. But the journey in New Directions was just to help me with my personal goals, to help me discover what I wanted to do, if it was school or just more in my career. So I really enjoyed the monthly meetings, the educational components, the scholarship opportunities, the childcare that they provided. They broke down the barriers to prevent you from, going to the meetings and, reaching your goals. And I especially enjoyed the mentors. So I worked in a high school, and I was able to receive confidence by going to New Directions. We took some education classes, and personally, I hated math until I went to New Directions and we had these math classes. And I realized math isn't as bad as I thought it was, but it allowed me to gain that confidence. So I was able to, with the confidence that I got from New Directions, I was able to go to my job and request more responsibilities. And with more responsibilities, it was more pay. So I realized that I enjoyed my job, and I enjoyed the responsibilities that came along with that. I enjoyed the different things that being with New Directions enabled me to do, like the advocacy program with the nonprofit, the board, just expanding my knowledge. So I was able to take part in so many things that not being a part of New Directions wouldn't have allowed me to do. So I am forever, grateful for that opportunity. I'm so thankful that I've gained so much experience to be able to speak in front of other people, to be able to tell them about New Directions and the opportunities that it has allowed me to obtain. So at this time, I just want to thank you for joining us. And I'd like to introduce Abby Zimmerman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katina.
Very much. That's wonderful. It's one of the reasons why I love being a part of New Directions. And so I'm Abby Zimmerman, and it's really great to be here tonight. And in beginning of 2000, I joined the board of New Directions, and I served on the finance committee. And this year, I took another leap and did what I really want to do, and that is empowering women. And my way of doing that was taking the appointment of treasurer for New Directions in the board of directors. So, but tonight I get the opportunity and the pleasure of introducing Craig, our guest tonight. And I met Craig briefly at a Women in Technology and Information Columbus chapter event in December of 2019. And just after 2020 started, right, the inevitable pandemic hit. And I was faced with an impact that I lost my job. And it was time to reevaluate what I wanted to do. And who was I? What was I going to do next? And creative Craig came to mind. And so I called Craig and he was graciously wanting to meet me. And so we got together. And of course, he said, tell me, Abby, tell me more about you. And of course, I went down through myself like a resume. And then I turned it over to Craig and I said, Craig, tell me what you're up to. What are you all about? And Craig started to share with me his life journey and found him very inspiring, and found that, gosh, he reflected on his life lessons. And then it wasn't until I picked up his book, Burdens of a Dream, that was right across the street at the book loft 1 hour later. And I think I even texted him a picture of me getting his book. But anyway, it wasn't until I read through that I catched and understood when we were speaking earlier that morning what Craig was doing. And he was really sharing with me some of the nuggets of wisdom that he has brought together throughout his life and throughout his journey and what he's all about. And so I thank you, Craig, for that. And over the past year, I really leaned on chapter 2, decisions, and chapter 10, purposefully seeking purpose. But anyway, I'm honored to introduce Craig. So let me do that officially. And so Craig's an award-winning author and business strategist on a mission to help entrepreneurs develop proactive, profitable, and proven business models. At the core of Craig's coaching philosophy lies the mantra, become the entrepreneur of your life. Through this lens, he coaches through an alternative and holistic perspective cultivated from over a decade of firsthand experience launching and managing multiple businesses in Ghana, Costa Rica, Peru, and the United States. He's a serial entrepreneur, a returned Peace Corps volunteer, a former Division I college athlete, and received his BSBA from Stanford University and MBA from the University of Tampa. Craig is also a super foodie, a world traveler, a lifelong learner, and currently resides right here in Columbus, Ohio. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Craig.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the kind introduction. And without any further delay, let's get right into it. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick. And can everybody see the slides, the presentations? Perfect. So today's talk is going to be a little different, and it's entitled Trust the Process, 5 Practical Tips for Becoming the Entrepreneur of Your Life. And as Abby kind of explained, like, I'm very, very intentional behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And what I entitled this talk, Trust the Process, I'm talking about the process of life. And the interesting thing about trusting the process is that it's really, really hard to let go and not try to circumvent the process. Because as humans, we're always trying to finesse life. We're trying to take shortcuts. But I found out that whenever you skip steps, you skip lessons. And so with this whole philosophy about becoming the entrepreneur of your life, it's best to address these lessons and these life experiences head on, because life has a funny way of bringing back those tests that we tried to shortcut and on delivering them 10 times harder. So what I'm going to be offering you is 5 practical tips to help you take life head on so that you can become the entrepreneur of your life. And so who am I? Well, Abby kind of completed that all, but my name's Craig, and I'm an award-winning author, business strategist, and entrepreneurial educator. And how I got here to this point in life is very, very interesting. It's been anything but traditional, anything but linear, and anything but easy. But there's nothing I would have changed about my life experience to date because it's been so rewarding. And I can definitely say that, like, I'm so thankful and honored to have this distinction of being the entrepreneur of my life. And I'll explain a little bit about that more as we move on. But a little bit about me and like how I got to this point with working with New Directions is that I'm truly an advocate for women. I had the fortunate opportunity of being the first ever man to join the board of Women in Technology International here in Columbus. And it's been very humbling getting to experience what business and professional development can be through the lens of a woman's perspective. Me being a man of color, me being a Black man, I've had my own bouts with discrimination and being held back and not getting an equitable experience. But what I wanted to do when I took on this role of joining the board of Witty was to be an advocate for women who are also disadvantaged, because I really believe in diversity, I really believe in equity, and I truly believe in inclusion. And the quicker we can get this gender equity and racial equity together, the better this world will be. But as Abby mentioned, no, I have this core coaching philosophy, and it's really about becoming the entrepreneur of your life. And I'm sure you're asking, like, what does that mean? Well, in my book, Burdens of a Dream, I define an entrepreneur as follows. An entrepreneur is anyone who takes a calculated risk to create something out of nothing and share it with the world. And so most people, they think that an entrepreneur just creates a business, or an entrepreneur just creates a product, a process, or a service. But the most important thing an entrepreneur should really be creating is the life that they live. Because guess what? Your life is a business and you're the product. You have a brand. You have the ability to market yourself. You have the ability to sell yourself. You have the ability to position yourself within this market. But when you think about yourself as a business, you move different and you're more strategic with the way that you approach life. And so with this philosophy, there's 4 major points that I see most people encountering on this journey to become the entrepreneur of their life. And today's talk is really going to address the first point of analysis paralysis. And this is the point where people are overthinking and they're deciding whether or not they want to take control of their life and pursue this idea of entrepreneurship. So what people must understand is that, like, your physical reality is a manifestation of your mental reality. And if you're not mentally in a frame of mind where you can think and behave like an entrepreneur, you'll never become an entrepreneur. So analysis paralysis is number 1. Step 2 in this journey is the starting point. And that's where you begin to get a little bit of clarity and you start brainstorming various business ideas that you can imagine yourself bringing into fruition. Point 3 is the inevitable crossroads, because all of us have experienced crossroads in our lives where we've had to decide whether or not we're going to commit or quit. Unfortunately, I see most people quitting, but with this philosophy of becoming the entrepreneur of your life, you can't quit because this is a decision that you face every day. But ultimately, I believe people who embody this philosophy get to this point of freedom where they've established a self-sustaining business and are living life on their terms. And whatever those terms are for you, once you're living life that way, that's when you're most free. But it's easier said than done to get there. And so for me being an author, I just want to tell you a story. And like I said, my life has been anything but normal, anything but linear, but it's been very extraordinary. And one of the poems that really inspired me in my book was Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. And for me, pursuing the road not taken has made all the difference. And so as I take you along on this journey, on this story, I'm going to take you to different places that I've lived. And every place that I've lived has given me a lesson or a nugget of wisdom that I want to give to you to help inspire you to become the entrepreneur of your life. And so we're going to start from day 1. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. And growing up, I had to move around a lot because of my father's job. He's a Black man as well, and he experienced a lot of discrimination at his work. And whenever he found himself hitting a glass ceiling, he told me, he's like, man, if you don't have any opportunities where you're at, sometimes you have to pack up your bags and move to a better place. And so whenever he ran into an issue at his job, couldn't get promoted, well, he decided to change up his environment and move to a different place in the city or move into a different place in the state. And kind of the big lesson I learned here is that sometimes you have to change your environment. If you're stuck where you're at, it's your own fault. It's not the system's fault. It's not the world's fault. You may have to uproot yourself to someplace different. So we did. And the next place I moved was Cleveland. And this was an interesting part of my life growing up because as a kid, I had a severe stuttering impediment and I was also dyslexic. My mother was as well. And I found out that like it's a hereditary thing. But it was very painful not being able to verbally articulate myself and getting picked on, by other kids in school. And the lesson I learned here was that if you have a problem, you're going to have to solve it yourself. The system wasn't going to help me. The teachers weren't going to help me. I had to spend the time after class or after school, doing Hooked on Phonics to really help me to learn how to articulate myself. And the ironic thing, 20 years later, I'm speaking, for a living. But it's something that people must always remember is that whenever you run into a problem, you're going to have to figure out how to solve it. And I learned that very young. So moving again, found myself down in Columbus. And this is when I really started to become entrepreneurial. My parents came from very humble beginnings. They spent all their money trying to get me into the biggest and best schools. But if I wanted any money to spend, if I wanted a vehicle, if I wanted to go out with my friends, I had to come up with that money myself. And so I've always been a lover of music, and I started DJing, became pretty reputable here in the Columbus area. And that's really what sparked my love for entrepreneurship, was figuring out how to make something out of nothing and share it with the world. But at the same time, along with my love for music, I was also a really good athlete. And I got the opportunity to play Division I college football down in Alabama. And the interesting thing about this time and this phase in my life was that all I identified with was sports. Nothing else mattered. And kind of the analogy today to the people listening to this talk is that oftentimes a lot of us have a major identity crisis with our jobs, and that's how we show up in the world. And sometimes when we lose our identity, we lose ourselves. And that's what happened to me. My sophomore year, I got the opportunity to start at defense. And the day before my first game as a starter, I suffered a neck and leg injury that ended my athletic playing career. And so that sent me into a spiral of depression. And I was almost a college dropout. But this wonderful woman you see on the page was my Spanish professor. And she told me, she's like, Craig, don't ever drop out. Don't quit, because that would be the worst decision you could ever make. And one of the things I learned from this experience is that none of us are self-made. We always have other people who are breathing into our lives and pointing us into other directions and helping us to make better decisions than we would make by ourselves. And so my professor locked me in her room and she's like, Craig, you should consider studying abroad. That might help you to clear your mind, give you some perspective, and inspire you to continue, with your degree and your academic studies. And so I reluctantly filled out the paperwork to go study abroad in Costa Rica. And I'm so thankful that I did. La pura vida in Costa Rica is something that's true. And just moving to another country, getting to speak another language, getting immersed in another culture allowed me to rest and heal and to get altitude, because I was so stuck in my personal storm. And a lot of us, we are stuck in our personal storms. But like I said before, our physical reality is a manifestation of our mental reality. And getting this ability, this time to rest and heal myself was super important. And so this leads me to the first tip that I have for you today. But like I said, my approach is different. And so before I give you a tip, I'm going to give you a quote that's really going to foreshadow and set the scene. And so this quote's from Jennifer Young, and she says, "Life is hard enough without the added fear, panic, and anxiety. Your soul is crying out for love and encouragement. Take a moment to breathe deep, get present, and find some compassion for yourself." And so the first tip for helping you to become the entrepreneur of your life is to rest. You got to take time to relax, clear your mind, and mentally recover. Especially nowadays, we're so inundated with the media, with COVID, with all these external distractions. And like I said, if your mind is broken, your body is going to be broken as well. So make sure you take the time to really get some gravity, rest, and heal yourself mentally, because we spend so much time trying to fill other people's cups up that our cups are empty. So in order for you to show up filled up, you have to fill up your own cup first. So you can be selfish and selfless at the same time, but make sure you take time to rest and heal yourself before you move on in life. And I'm so glad I did, because I came back from Costa Rica so refreshed. And I was undecided with my major at that time, but I started DJing to make ends meet because I didn't have a full athletic scholarship anymore. So I switched my major to entrepreneurship. I double minored in Spanish and international business. And my business was so successful that I was able to go to Spain for 6 months to really finish out my degree in Spanish. And that moment really crystallized this idea and this dream of becoming an international business person. I just didn't know how this was going to occur. But I got done with all my studies very quickly, and I was figuring out next steps for my life. And moving forward, again, like I said, none of us are self-made. And my parents knew me best. They're like, Craig, if you go into the workforce, there's no way you're going to go back to school. And they were right. And so I considered that to be a sign. And so I went down to Florida and knocked out my 2-year MBA program in 10 months. And it was a really, really fast process. And so after I finished my studies, I was interviewing in New York City and San Francisco at various tech companies. But I knew from that moment that when I walked into these interviews that this wasn't for me. I just didn't see myself sitting in a cubicle coding or managing people that were coding for the rest of my life. And so chapter 2 in the book, decisions, decisions, decisions. I had to make a decision. And fortunately, that decision was made for me because I didn't get a job offer after grad school. But what did happen was that after I was leaving New York on my way back to Tampa to figure out my next best steps, I ran into a Peace Corps recruiter and shared with her my story. And she's like, Craig, you're fluent in Spanish, you have your graduate degree, you're entrepreneurial, you want to live overseas. The Peace Corps is a perfect opportunity for you. And so that leads into quote number 2 and tip number 2. And I love this quote from Jim Rohn. And he says, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. And that's what I felt when I was interviewing for these jobs. I was like, these people don't have anything planned for me. I'm just going to be a diversity hire checkbox, no more and nothing less. And for me to become the entrepreneur of my life, I had to take control of my life path. And so that leads us into tip number 2, is that after you rest and clear your mind, you got to strategize. You have to analyze your options, create a plan, and start executing. And the moment this Peace Corps opportunity fell on my plate, I created a plan to get into the Peace Corps. It was Peace Corps or bust. And that application took me 8 hours. And then I had to go through this arduous gauntlet of medical exams, I had to get all these different shots. But I finally got cleared to go to Peru and serve as a Peace Corps volunteer. And my whole role was this thing called a community economic development facilitator, which is a fancy way of saying business coach or business consultant. Am I unmuted now? Oh, okay, can everybody
I was
hear me now?
trying to admit somebody and accidentally it shifted and I hit mute. So I'm so sorry. It really is not my goal.
Oh, perfect. So what I was saying is that I got the opportunity to serve in Peru as a business coach and business consultant. And they always tell you that the Peace Corps is the toughest job you'll ever love. And it was a very intense experience. I mean, the highs were very high and the lows were very low. And what was so amazing about this is that I had this whole idea that I would be the expert, that I would be the one teaching people, I would be helping people, I would be changing the world. But I winded up learning 100 times more than what I ever taught. And aside from me doing business coaching and business consulting, I did import exporting, I did fair trade certification. But what I loved the most was teaching youth entrepreneurship in high schools and colleges. And like I said, life has a funny way of working out. And so one of my co-professors, co-facilitators was a distiller. And after class, he would teach me how to distill Pisco, which was the national spirit of Peru. And so me being this mischievous entrepreneur, I was like, this stuff's good enough to sell. And so the group of farmers you see in the top right-hand corner became my first customers. And so the people who I was coaching, I was also selling liqueurs to on the side, which was illegal in the Peace Corps, but they didn't have to know about that. And I built up a massive following that encouraged me to immigrate back to Peru by myself and open up one of the country's first branded craft distilleries on this beach that you see in the top right-hand corner. And it was such a super successful venture. In less than 9 months, I got 4 different products to market. I was exporting my liqueurs that you see on this page to the US, to Mexico and Chile. And I actually outgrew the space that I was leasing. And so when this was happening, I approached my landlord and I asked her to extend my lease and also to allow me to expand my footprint and rent out different pieces of property that she owned. But she was reluctant to do that. And she came back 2 weeks later and ultimately confessed that she didn't own the property to begin with. Her sister was the actual owner of the property. And so unfortunately, there's no law in the world that prevents you from signing a fake contract. And so it was actually my fault that I signed a bad contract and I couldn't afford the new contract that they gave me. So unfortunately, I had to shut down my dream business unexpectedly. And that leads us into the third quote and the third piece of advice. And this is from Mary Ann Radmacher. And she says, unexpected events can set you back or set you up. It's all a matter of perspective. And I was hurt after that. I was so frustrated because it's like I went to this country, I gave 3.5 years of my life to these people. And in return, I get defrauded out of my dream business. And so I didn't know what to do with myself. But what I did realize was that I experienced failure. But as I wrote in my book, fail just means a first attempt in learning. Like I literally was the first ever American to start a distillery in another country. And I was doing things that nobody else had ever done before. And so I couldn't fault myself for the mistakes that I had made because I had never done that before in my life. And so many entrepreneurs get wrapped up in this idea of failure. But when you've never started a business before, inevitably you're going to make mistakes. But guess what? A mistake isn't a mistake until you keep repeating it over and over again. That's what they say. Insanity is expecting different results from doing the same things over and over again. But to prevent yourself from being insane, tip number 3 is to reflect. And that's because setbacks are inevitable, but every life event can be transformed into a learning lesson. So make sure to always reflect upon all the life events that you went through, because there could be a hidden negative wisdom within that experience. So continuing on, after my experience in Peru, I felt like I had gotten robbed of my dream and I just wasn't happy. And so I found myself back in Costa Rica working at a travel startup, but unfortunately that wasn't my business. I was running it like it was my business and I got fired after a month. And so what was I gonna do? Well, the next best thing for me was to find a place to stay. So I found myself in Baltimore, literally sleeping on my sister's couch. That's all she had in her little row house, but I was so thankful that she gave me a place to lay my head and heal, because my mind still hadn't gotten over, my experience in Peru. And so I was just very lethargic. I was in this pity, like, why me? Why Craig? Why did this happen? But ultimately I realized that nobody was going to help me but me. I remembered back in those days when I was stuttering and I was having those speaking issues, the only person who was going to solve my stuttering problem was myself. And so for me, being jobless, being moneyless, being kind of like homeless on a couch, I had to figure out my next best steps. And so this leads us into quote number 4 and tip number 4. And this quote's from Sylvia Earle. And she says, hold up a mirror and ask yourself what you're capable of doing and what you really care about. Then take the initiative. Don't wait for someone else to ask you to act. And as much as I had my sister's support, as much as I had my family's support, I had to be the one to get up and change my life circumstance. But as I said before, none of us are self-made. We all have people who can help us out. Chapter 24 in my book is entitled Closed Mouths Don't Get Fed. And if people don't know that, you help you. And so tip number 4 to help you become the entrepreneur of your life is to be resourceful. Don't be afraid to reach out to your network and ask for help. I know as men or as women, we could be very prideful and we don't want to share with people our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. But it's a sign of strength when you can admit that, hey, I'm broken. Hey, I need help. Can you help me out? And so when you do that, the universe will embrace you and provide you with opportunities that you could only dream of. And so that's what I did. I reached out for help, and my Peace Corps network was based in Washington, D.C. I started showing up to different events, putting myself out there. And I went to the startup weekend, made a connection with a guy whose father owned a headhunting company. I cold called that guy and told him my story, and he's like, wow, I think I have a job for you. There's somebody who owns a tech startup who's looking for somebody very entrepreneurial. And I walked in the interview and got a job on the spot. And life changed for me for the better, because now I had some income. But this experience working as a project manager was very, very stressful. And I always had this entrepreneurial bug in me. So on the side of my work as a project manager, I also launched my company called Visa Jump, which was the world's first travel visa processing platform leveraged by blockchain. I had some success with this venture, signed a couple embassies on as clients, but my co-founder's from Vietnam, and she had to move back to her home country to address some family issues. And while she was overseas, I was trying to run the business by myself, lost a little bit of interest from clients. Politics got in the way of sealing some of these deals. So I had to liquidate that company. And so I was full-time at this 9-to-5 job that I really didn't enjoy. And this job was super stressful. I had to wake up at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to answer calls. Some days I would be so stressed out, I would get a bloody nose working at the desk because there was just so much pressure on me from like the owners. And after I got a big severance package, once the company got bought out, I quit and I was like, okay, what is next? And so at that same time, my grandmother was aging, she had transitioned on, it caused some issues with family. And I was like, you know what, maybe I need to come back home to Ohio. It had been almost a decade since I've been back. And I'm like, maybe this is kind of going to be a rebirth for me, but I'm starting over from scratch again. And I ran into another issue. And this leads us into quote number 5 and tip number 5. And this quote's from a nice Neen. And she said, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And so that quote to me was very powerful because like I was trapped in my bud. I was really afraid to let the world know who Craig really was. And I was interviewing at all these different companies here in Columbus, from big companies down to startups. And once again, I couldn't get a job, whether it was discrimination or whether because people were afraid of my entrepreneurial background, I couldn't get a job. And I kept trying to hide who I really was, and that was an entrepreneur. But something changed when I decided to be bold. And that's tip number 5 for helping you to become the entrepreneur of your life, is that you got to be bold. Don't be afraid to share your gifts and talents with the world. And each and every person on this chat right now has some crazy gifts and talents and skills that nobody else in the world has. But the fact of the matter is that so many people are afraid and are not confident enough in themselves to share their gifts and talents with the world. And guess what? When you don't share your gifts and talents with the world, you're doing the world a disservice. So you got to be bold and be willing to show the world who you really are. And that's what happened to me. I mean, I was just going around Columbus networking, sharing my story, and I happened to run into a guy who was a publisher. And he's like, Craig, you got a book in you. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm just another guy trying to make it. But he's like, you really have a book in you. Maybe you should consider this book deal and write something, and maybe something big might happen. And once again, I reluctantly signed a contract. And that book was first a project. It was something laborious. But later on, that book transmuted into a calling. And as you'll read on the first pages of the dedication, I wrote the following words. I said this book is dedicated to all those who will dare to abandon the status quo, answer their calling to discover the person they're truly meant to become. And so as much as I was writing those words to my readers, I was writing those words to myself, because I had to answer my calling to abandon the status quo, follow the road not taken, and discover the person who I was truly meant to become. And that's this entrepreneur and business person who you see today. And so I had to be willing to be bold enough to share my story and my gifts with the world. And I'm so glad that I did, because now after almost like a decade, it was like 12 years since I left Ohio, now I feel like I'm finally coming back full circle. And so the kid that was stuttering, that couldn't articulate himself, is now a paid professional speaker. The person who was afraid to share their gifts and talents with the world is now a very successful entrepreneur and award-winning author. But it's like I had to go through that process. I had to trust the process, as crazy as it was. And the interesting thing about life is that in the world, we're going to experience those mountains and those valleys. but there is no valley without a mountain. Like you have to experience those highs and lows. It's like being hooked up to an EKG machine, like your heartbeat. It goes up and it goes down. But when it flatlines, guess what? You're gone. And you don't want your life to flatline. You want to experience these ups and downs, but you got to trust the process. It's way easier said than done. But if you do it, if you don't take any shortcuts and you embrace this whole philosophy about becoming the entrepreneur of your life, you'll be so rewarded. And so to kind of like wrap things up, just to go back and give you a recap, the 5 tips for becoming the entrepreneur of your life are: number 1, you got to rest. Like you can't work if you're mentally broken or if you're physically broken. You got to take time to rest and heal yourself. You have to fill up your cup first before you decide to fill everybody else's cup up. Next, after you rest, you got to strategize. You got to create a plan. Like just jumping into something, jumping into a job, or just jumping in and starting a business is a very, very bad idea. Like you got to create a plan, and you have to be very, very strategic and intentional about what you're doing. Now, after you strategize, before you make any moves, reflect. Take time to look back at how far you've come. Like all of us have lived very fulfilling and very rewarding lives, but sometimes we beat our own selves down and we're our own worst enemies. But sometimes you have to take a break and pat yourself on the back and be like, wow, I've done a lot. Because guess what? If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So make sure you take the time to reflect on just how far you've come along in your journey. Now, after you reflected, you got to be resourceful. Like oftentimes you're starting from scratch. You don't know where point A is. You don't know where point B is. But like I said, closed mouths don't get fed. You have to let people know what you're up to. You can't just work in a vacuum. And it's amazing when you let people know what you're working on, how quickly and how much they may want to help you out to accomplish your goals. And then last but not least, none of this will ever happen until you decide to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Fortune favors the bold. And so if you have a dream, if you want to become an entrepreneur, if you really want to change your life, you have to go out and put in that work, but you have to be bold. You know, they often say, you know, scared money doesn't make money. You have to be willing to invest in yourself and do things you've never done to experience things that you've never experienced. But I'm sure you're like, wow, Craig, interesting story. So what? This doesn't apply to me. I'm not an entrepreneur. I've just worked a job most of my life. I'm not creative. I'm not innovative. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. All of us have these skills and talents. All of us are creative. All of us are innovative. All of us have the ability to create value for others. But there's so much mis and disinformation out there. And so as an entrepreneur, literally, you're just being creative and you're innovative and you're solving problems for yourself. You're creating your own business. But guess what? There's this concept of entrepreneurship, which is basically the same thing. An entrepreneur is somebody who's creative and innovative and solve problems within a pre-established system. You can be an entrepreneur at your job. You could be creative. You could be innovative. You could be very value adding. And guess what? These people with this entrepreneurial disposition, the people that can think and behave like an entrepreneur, are going to be the people who are best positioned for the future. Because there's an interesting quote that I was reading about that 65% of the jobs in the future do not exist today. And so the more entrepreneurial, the more creative, the more innovative, the more value adding you could be, and the better position you'll be in the future. So whether or not you want to create your own company or you want to work for somebody else, thinking and behaving like an entrepreneur is going to position you for success now and in the future. And so wrapping things up, going back to my coaching philosophy about becoming the entrepreneur of your life, I really and sincerely hope that I provided you with enough value and enough tools with the book, with this presentation, and with the workbook to help you get out of this analysis paralysis. Because eventually you're going to come to a decision where you're either going to become the entrepreneur of your life or you're going to let life pass you by. But guess what? This is only part 1 of a 2-part series, because in August, we have a second presentation coming up where I'm going to get out of the mindset about entrepreneurship and get into some of the more nitty-gritty tangibles of entrepreneurship. So on August 18th, we'll be having a workshop where we really address the starting point of entrepreneurship. and I'm going to help you to get some clarity and brainstorm some business ideas that you are qualified to start. So to give you a little tease for August, there's this thing called the creative conundrum that I believe every entrepreneur runs into when they're starting out. And it's as simple as this. Am I the right person in the right position to solve the right problem for the right people in the right way? I'll say that one more time because it's pretty heavy. Am I the right person in the right position to solve the right problem for the right people in the right way? And if you could answer this question with confidence, then you're well positioned and well qualified to start the business that you have in mind. Because starting a business is not just about making money, it's about creating value for other people and solving their problems. Because the more problems you can solve for other people, the more valuable you'll be and the more profitable your business will become. And so I'll be using this question to help build upon the workshop that we have coming up on Wednesday, August 18th from noon to 1 p.m. And so, like I said, some of the topics will be business ideation, founder market fit, and self-discovery, because the trick here is to build a business around you that you have mastery of. Because the number one problem entrepreneurs run into is founder market fit. And founder market fit basically means that you're qualified, you have enough experience, you have a big enough skill set, and you have enough disposition and aptitude to start this business. So the audience is for everybody in the room here today, and be sure to be on the lookout for information from Celeste and everybody else at New Directions for that. And so I'm going to wrap up the presentation and open it up for questions. But like I said, I armed you with this presentation. You got a copy of the book. But to get the most value out of what I'm talking about today, you got to get a copy of the workbook. Because it's one thing to hear me talk, it's one thing to read the story. But if you can't critically think, analyze, and apply what I'm talking about, you're not going to get the maximum value. So the workbook has a lot of tools and exercises that are really going to help you to gain maximum value from the life and business lessons with the book. Furthermore, I also have a newsletter and a really, really popular article called 6 Questions Every Entrepreneur Should Answer. And you can get a copy of that article and sign up for my newsletter at my website. And I'll drop a link in the chat. And then, of course, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm very open to questions outside of this chat. And so feel free to contact me at craig@creativecraig.com. So without further ado, I need everybody to hop on camera and hit me with some of these questions. So thanks for listening, and I really hope you got value from this. How do I end this? You still see my screen? There we go.
I actually did something for good that time instead of for evil. Instead of muting you, I actually did what you wanted, Craig.
You fired me.
So if you guys want to take yourselves off of speaker view, you can do that. You can see everybody else. It's completely up to you. But please feel free to unmute yourselves, turn on your video so Craig can see who he's talking to, and we'd love to hear your questions.
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat box. So Denisha, you said I've never thought about it like that. What do you mean? Or is Denisha addressing her son? She might be away.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm mothering right now.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was such a good point though, because I always think of, I think of marketing myself, but I never actually think of my life as a business and like me as the product. So that stuck with me really.
Yeah, it's about reframing, kind of like looking at the world through a different perspective. And it's like when you think different, you do different. And like when you do different, you stand out. And so when you position yourself to, stand out in the market, you get paid for that. So that's just like a way I like thinking about myself and how I show up in the world is as a business. Hence why the company's name is Creative Craig.
Yes, so. I love it.
And Brianna, yes, everybody can get a copy of these slides. I could send those out to Celeste or anybody who's doing that.
Awesome.
Questions?
Okay, thank you for the slides. And I was wondering if you had any specific process, because I'm kind of in the middle of possibly trying to start my own business, but I don't really like telling people my plans. So is there any specific process that you use to kind of get over the ego?
You have a tangible business or a tangible product out there, it's kind of meaningless. And so like we oftentimes think that people are going to steal our ideas and cut us short and do these nefarious things. But like I said, working in a vacuum is the worst thing you could do, because guess what? Like, you can't sell your products to people if they don't know what you're doing. So eventually you're going to have to tell somebody about it, but just know that like an idea is an idea.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's tough, but just think about it like that. An idea is just an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Craig. I'm Damien.
Hey, Damien, how you doing?
I just want to say thank you. This was thoroughly enjoyable. And I used to work for a place called the National Business Incubation Association. And we used to sell resources for small business development centers and innovation centers and research parks. And we would have had this book in our resource store if it would have came out when I was still there. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. L. Bayer, what is your definition of again for entrepreneur at the beginning of the session? Well, if you got the book, you'll find that in the introduction. But I define an entrepreneur as anybody who takes a calculated risk to create something out of nothing and share it with the world. It's literally what an entrepreneur is. You're just creating something out of nothing and you're sharing it. Like, you got to be creative. So an entrepreneur is a creator of things, basically.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
This is Rosetta. I have a question. Hi, Craig.
How you doing?
Good.
Did she freeze?
Yeah, Rosetta, we can't hear you. So I don't know if you've frozen up or what.
Disciplined to work on your new business ventures when the other things failed.
Would you mind repeating? I think you cut off for like 30 seconds.
Okay. What are some of the things you did to keep yourself motivated and disciplined to work on new business ideas when the other businesses failed?
Great question. I like to speak in analogies. So one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. And there's a really interesting scene when like the main character is going to go meet like Morpheus. He's like the coach. And this guy is going to give him the pills to give him the truth, the knowledge. But the guy's scared. And so as they're driving to meet this guy, the main character freezes and he's like, drop me out the car. I want to go back home. And so like they brake and they open up the car door and he looks back and it's a road going nowhere. It's just pitch black. And like that story, that scene was so profound. And so for me, it's like when I experience failure, I realize that like if I quit, I'm looking back at nothing. Like the only direction I have to go is forward, like forwards, never backwards. And so like I knew that with my businesses, the reason why some of them failed wasn't because they weren't good businesses. It wasn't because I didn't work hard enough. It wasn't because I wasn't creating value for people. There was literally things like out of my control that I couldn't have ever foreseen. Like, who would have ever told me that the contract I signed was fake? Like, nobody would have told me that. With my business in DC, like I can't stop a war from breaking out in the country. Like my main client, Turkey, had to quit because in their country there was a coup and the military stopped all travel from coming into the country. Like there's nothing I could have done about that. So if I know that deep down inside I did everything I could and something still didn't work out, then it just wasn't meant to be. But never look backwards, always go forward. And that was just a lesson that I had to learn. So that's the way I look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Craig. This is Lisa Freeman Williamson. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I am the founder of a civic engagement entity. Do you have any tips on where to find funders?
Oh, money right now. I mean, that's always a taboo topic, especially now. That's tough. I mean, like, it depends, like who believes in your mission, vision, and values. Like, anybody who believes in what you're doing could be a potential funder. So I would just look up people who would be interested possibly in whatever you're doing and go from there. That's probably the best piece of advice I could give you. But, money, you never know where it's going to come from. But like I said, put yourself out there, let people know what you're doing. If they see value in it, then maybe they might send a donation your way.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hey, oh,
Hey, what's going on?
wait a minute. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So my name is Lola, and I just want to say thanks. I kind of came in a little late. I kind of got pulled away, but I'm looking forward to using your workbook. Now, how do we just obtain that from the website?
Yeah, Amazon's probably the best place to get it.
Okay, because I need to hold myself accountable, and I think that'll be a great way to do it. I've been in business since 2014, but I've been LLC'd, I'm gonna say that, since 2014. I have not completely and totally put everything I have into it because I have another profession. My business is, I have a beauty salon and boutique. And in this world, especially now with COVID and everything, it's become even more challenging to maintain or to have a clientele base. Or so now I'm more so like driving to get more online based. And I think my biggest obstacle right now is being efficient with overseas purchasing, because that's where a lot of primarily all of my products come from. In order for me to be able to make a profit
right
off of these products, if I buy them in the States, there is no profit. As a matter of fact, you're underneath, you're upside down. So that's forcing me to even purchasing from overseas can kind of get somewhat that way too. So what I'm finding myself doing is really, as you say, trying to strategize and figure out what makes me stand out, how I can market. So that's another thing. I was on the phone all day with a company about marketing, purchasing their services for marketing. The major part of me just wants to jump right in because it's what I need, it's what I want to do, but I don't want to invest that type of money and then have no turnaround. I've done that multiple times with this business, and it has caused me to give up on it in the past and just go back to my career because I'm a registered nurse too. So now I'm being forced into my purpose, and I'm okay with that because, everything is still fine. Nothing's gone to pot. So I'm okay with it, but I do kind of feel like I need to hold myself accountable for, how to strategize, how to market, how to obtain these products, and it's like, I want to go straight to it and drive just like I did in school, but it's a little more difficult because there's so much content out there. It's like, how do you sift through all of that and
Well,
go
you can't.
straight to the meat? That's what I need. I need the meat. I don't need the junk food. I need the meat so that I can eat or feed others, you know?
Right.
And that's where I'm finding the frustration at with really getting this business full-fledged and off the ground.
Well, like I said, it's a process. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? But when it comes to like marketing, a little tip with marketing, like before you even market, you have to figure out what's your position. Like, what is your brand? Like, what is your messaging? Because like your messaging is going to determine like how you market yourself. But the thing is like if you position yourself to be different and unique, and you have a unique selling proposition or a unique value proposition, and if your brand resonates with your customers, that's going to do the marketing for you. So the more you focus on your positioning and your branding, the less you'll have to market. But that's really, you have to know yourself, know your story, and know what kind of differentiates you from your competition. But really good question. Get the workbook will really help you out. So
Okay, thank you.
that. And then Damien, and so I saw you had a question in the chat. You want to elaborate with that about funding and royalties and equities and stuff?
How do you not give away your farm? Because I know you
Contracts.
talked about in the book, you know, trying to
Mhm.
find investors, but
Mhm.
you don't want to give them all of the equity.
Contracts, like upfront, like the quicker you can get something in writing, the better. Because when people agree verbally to anything, like that's when you get into the he said, she said, hearsay type stuff.
Okay.
So if people are talking about equity, talking about money, like get in the contract, but before anybody gets any equity, you should give them like a 90-day trial run. Like people have to prove themselves that they're actually worth whatever they're trying to charge or take from you. I had that problem with my old co-founder. Like she went from like 10% equity and she wanted 30%, but she wasn't doing 30% of the work. So get everything written down in paper, and there you go.
Okay. And another question I had was, since you talk to a lot of small business startups and people that are trying to get into small business, are you seeing more trends towards more things that are more personal, more customized? I mean, with COVID and all the lockdown, I don't think, can we go back to seeing like mass marketed things or mass made things, or are we going to be staying into this small business, customized, specialized, bespoke kind of services?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, right now is like the whole urge and desire for entrepreneurship is going through the roof because people are realizing that maybe depending on one source of income outside of your control isn't the best option. So what I'm seeing two big trends. Number one is like direct to consumer businesses. So somebody who has a product that they make that they can ship directly to a client or a customer through their website. Like that's really big. And then the second thing that's really big is what these lifestyle businesses. So people who have like a specialty or a talent or a skill, and they've built a business around that to support themselves full time, whether it's like a contractor or a consultant, you name it. But a lifestyle business is basically anything, not like a gigantic tech startup. So direct to consumer product based businesses and lifestyle businesses are blowing up from what I'm seeing. Cool. Anybody else? Stephanie, Gabrielle, Nancy, anybody?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do want to tell you thank you. And I did enjoy your presentation. I look forward to reading your book.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna diddle that.
Me too. I agree with that too.
You're welcome.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chavis, I think a lot of your tips and your points and reflection moments, can be applicable to other parts of your life. So it's just not about, the idea, which I think is very important about forming the business and going forward. But, there might be other areas in your life where you can still use those tips, and they can be very practical, especially like looking in the mirror, identifying, what you need to see, and, understanding what holds you back versus going forward. So I appreciate that practicality, if not just in the business entrepreneur thought process, but in other aspects as well. So thank you for the presentation.
No doubt. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, bad information people get. Like, I'm sure we've all heard this, like, it's never business, or it's never personal, or separate your business from your personal life. Well, fun fact is, like, when you're an entrepreneur and like you put yourself into your business and you put your entire being into your business, it becomes very, very personal. And so oftentimes I see that like businesses are actually a reflection of the people that create them. And so when I do a lot of coaching and consulting and I see a lot of these busted businesses, it's because the ownership's busted. Like, I'm sure a lot of people have worked at companies and the company's all disorganized, the processes suck, working there is not enjoyable. And then you go to the leadership and you find out like they don't have their stuff together. So it's like the more you get yourself together, the better your business will be, because like our creations are oftentimes a reflection of the creators. And like when people really get that, like that's why when you invest in yourself and you become the best version of yourself, like you're really unstoppable, and like your business will flourish if you flourish. So that's why I see it the way it is, like that.
I can't wait to get my copy of your book. When you started talking about paralysis by analysis, this girl right here. So yeah, a lot of your words very much spoke to me, and I appreciate so much your presentation. And so this opportunity just came to me yesterday. So I feel very blessed to be here and hear your words, and can't wait to get my hands on my copy of your book. And I think that I also will be taking that opportunity to also look into the workbook. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Kimmy, what's up?
Hey, how are you?
Happy and healthy.
Good. Hey, thank you so much. This is a great message. Your presentation was absolutely wonderful. And I look at this like we are entrepreneurs of our own self, which is our business, right? And I kind of relate it to that. And I think that, the words that you say and the things that you have taught us tonight or shared your experience, we can certainly take that forward even for ourselves. We are our business, and we got to run our business to be successful anywhere else. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
No doubt. You're so welcome. And it's like, the person that you see in the mirror is either your best friend or worst enemy.
It's exactly it.
Who is she?
Who is it?
Yeah. And the quicker you get out of your own way, the easier life is.
Absolutely.
Because there was a quote that I found. It's like, we all have the free will to become whatever we want, but then other people have the free will to prevent that from happening.
Absolutely.
It's our job to make sure that doesn't happen.
Exactly. And I think those are some of the lessons that you taught us tonight in your experiences. So appreciate it a lot. And I think we can all walk away from this with something, and let's go do something with it. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Good.
Craig, this is Celeste. So I actually put in the comments, like there's so many great pieces and nuggets of information here. Like I don't even know what my favorite was, right? And so I kind of feel like your book is going to be that thing that I leave at my nightstand, right? And pick up and refer back to it. And probably every time I look at it, I'm going to pick up something different, right? Like pull from something different, depending on where I am, what I'm experiencing, what my challenges are. And last but very not least, the inspiration that's in all the nuggets of wisdom. I mean, really, thank you so much. It really is a gift from you to us. So thank you.
Which is gracias. You're welcome.
Hi, Craig, if I could add to that, I really enjoyed your presentation, and I took some really good notes of everything that you said. One of my favorite things that you said is like, there's no valley without a mountain. You can't inherit that valley or get there unless you get over that mountain. And I just really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to getting your book and getting the workbook as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, like who wants to have like a flat, boring life, right? Like, not
Exactly.
me. Not
No, because there's greater, there's so much more greater in store for all of us than what we think. And we have to open up our minds, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a mentality first. Like what to say, the body does what the mind thinks. And so here's a fun fact: is like our physical limitations are actually way beyond our mental limitations. And like the moment your mind says I can't, it's game over. So once you stop thinking like that and like think that yeah you can, it's cheesy, but there's reasons why people can run ultra marathons 100 miles and not have their legs fall apart. Well, it's like they think they can and they do it. So same with life, same with business.
So Craig, I think we have time for maybe one more question. If anybody else has one more that they want to get in here before we wrap up the evening. Well, that's a great way to leave. Oh, I was going to say that's a great way to leave it with nobody else having questions, right?
No, we got to get that last one in.
Just the last one is Lola. Sorry. Do you have any suggestions on how or where to get a good website built?
Well, it depends what you need. I mean, that's the first question to ask.
Well,
but
I need a retail website.
Well, everything's cost effective. I mean, I think people screw themselves when they try to go for like the full Monty when they first start, but like just putting something out that looks professional, that gets the job done, like a Wix or a Squarespace or one of like these plug and play templates that you can control and manipulate yourself. Because like if you hire somebody to do something and you have to call them every time you need something to fix, like that's gonna really be a negative. So less is more. Like I look at Wix, Squarespace, any of these plug and play type of website builders just to get your presence out there, and then you could get something more expensive later. But that's the direction I'd go.
Okay, thank you.
That's also a great way to figure out what you need, right? In terms of the content to be able to publish it. So starting someplace that has a template for you, and it takes a while for you to gather all the information you're going to need to be able to put on there. So I love the idea of Squarespace or something like that. It's awesome.
Less is more.
Right. Okay, well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. So just in case those of you that were not on in the beginning, I'm Celeste Gamble. I'm the Director of Development at New Directions. I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. So Craig, this group of amazing individuals, some of them are people who have blessed us with asking us to partner with them as they figure out what's next for them in their career and in their lives, with whatever that they're dealing with. And they come into our programs or into individual career counseling. And so we're so grateful that they trust us to be able to do that. We love that we were able to offer this opportunity to our clients, to our donors, to anybody here that's new to us and would like to learn more about New Directions. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm the one that sent the email with the link. And so just reach out to me directly. That would be awesome. Don't forget that Craig has offered a 2-for-1, right? The August event. We'll make sure that each of you get the information on that so that you're able to register and join us for that event. I do want to say, Craig, thank you so much for just, your passion and your wisdom. And Craig not only gave of his time and talent with us here today, he also donated books to the center. So for every book that was purchased, we had donors who actually bought one and gave one. So we're really grateful for that. But this also acted as a fundraiser for us. And every dollar that we were able to raise will go back into providing programming for really, really special, deserving women. And so we thank you for your advocacy and for your support.
Yep. Craig, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And your tip number 5, which was thank you for, or to make sure and sharing your gifts and talents. boy, you sure did that with us.
You sure did.
Yeah, and we just can't thank you enough.
Yep.
Well, I'll see you on August. So
you're amazing. Great.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Celeste.
Thanks, Craig.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks, Les.
See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. It was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Celeste.
Thank you.